An alien king, cruel and unrelenting, mocks his own daughter, claiming her broken and useless. But what if the very weakness he discarded her for became her greatest strength? When mercenary Levi Dre is handed the king's broken daughter, Princess Zara, he expects a simple job. Instead, he finds himself bound to a woman whose defiance and untapped power could change everything. As they journey together, facing impossible odds, Zara must confront her past, fight her father's cruelty, and discover the warrior she was always meant to be. But will it be enough to defeat a king who sees her as nothing more than a burden? Stay tuned. This is no ordinary tale of redemption. This is the rise of a broken princess. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. Levi Dre stood motionless before the massive crystalline throne, his eyes scanning the alien architecture surrounding him. The throne room of King Valthor Kreen was like nothing he had ever seen. The walls shimmered with an ethereal purple light, the kind that seemed to seep from every corner of the room, bathing the space in an otherworldly glow. The throne itself was made of living crystal, its edges curling and bending in strange organic patterns. It was a blend of nature and technology, a beauty that left Levi uneasy. But Levi wasn't here to admire the decor. He had spent the last 3 months on this godforsaken planet, working for the alien monarch in exchange for a hefty sum. The task had been simple on paper: eliminate a rebellious faction that had been disrupting the planet's precious mineral exports. But the mission had turned out to be anything but simple. Levi's ship, the Midnight Gale, had sustained heavy damage in the process. His body was bruised, tired, and ready for rest. All he wanted now was the agreed-upon payment of 50,000 credits. "Your payment, human." The voice of King Valthor Kreen broke the silence. His tone was dripping with mockery, his elongated features twisting into a smile that would have sent a chill down anyone's spine. He lounged on his crystalline throne, his iridescent skin shimmering with each movement, as if he were more creature than monarch. Levi's jaw clenched, but he kept his composure. "I came for my credits, not your, entertainment." King Valthor's laughter echoed in the grand hall. "Indeed you did, mercenary, but I have something far more valuable to offer you." At that he gestured with a sweeping motion of his hand. From the side of the throne room, 2 guards stepped forward, pushing a hover chair into the room. Levi's gaze immediately snapped to the figure sitting in it, and his breath caught in his throat. It was a woman, no, an alien princess. But there was something about her that made her different from all the others Levi had seen. Her features were startlingly human-like. Her skin was pale, almost translucent lavender, and her long, wavy chocolate-brown hair cascaded down her back. Yet it was her eyes that drew Levi's attention the most. Brilliant violet orbs, blazing with an intensity that could burn through steel. They were full of fury, but also sadness, as if she were fighting an inner war no one could see. "This is my daughter," King Valthor announced, his voice thick with disdain. "Princess Zara. She is yours now." Levi blinked, confused. "Yours? What do you mean by that?" Zara's lips curled into a bitter smile. "I'm not anyone's to give away," she muttered, her voice sharp as a blade. King Valthor waved dismissively at her. "She's a defective specimen born with useless legs." His hand motioned to the hover chair she sat in. "She's a burden to my kingdom. And now, I'm rid of her." Levi's eyes flickered between the king and Zara, his blood boiling at the casual cruelty. But what caught his attention even more was the flicker of defiance in Zara's eyes. Despite the king's harsh words, she still held herself with a dignity that Levi couldn't ignore. There was strength beneath the surface, a strength that no one but Levi seemed to notice. Zara's voice cut through the tension. "So this is how you dispose of your embarrassment of a daughter? You hand me over like a broken piece of furniture to some human mercenary?" Her tone was filled with bitterness and a sharp sense of betrayal. Valthor didn't seem bothered. "Consider yourself fortunate, daughter. I'm ridding myself of a problem while settling a debt. And remember, you're still of royal blood." Levi's hand instinctively moved toward his holstered plasma pistol. The guards around him tensed, their weapons humming to life, but Levi did not draw his weapon. Instead, he slowly scanned the room, trying to make sense of what was happening. King Valthor smiled again, more mockingly than ever. I've made my offer. Take her or leave her. The deal is altered. Accept it, or you leave with nothing at all. Levi took a deep breath, his eyes narrowing. He hadn't come here to get tangled in some royal family drama. He had come for his payment, plain and simple. But as he looked at Zara, he saw something that made the decision for him. She was angry. She was humiliated. But there was also something else in her, something fierce and untamed. It was clear to Levi that she had no love for her father, and he could understand why. In her eyes, he saw the same thing he had seen in the mirror many times before. A person who had been cast aside, treated as less than human, and forced to fight for their survival. Fine, Levi said, his voice steady. I accept. King, Valthor's smile widened. Excellent. Guards, escort them out. And Zara, do try not to disappoint your new owner as thoroughly as you've disappointed me. Levi felt a mix of anger and frustration rise within him, but he kept his focus. This wasn't his battle. His payment had been delayed, but now he was stuck with this unexpected arrangement. He turned to Zara as they were led out of the throne room. Zara's eyes locked onto his. Don't think I'm going to be a willing partner in this. Levi gave a small nod. I'm not interested in ownership, Princess. I'm here for my credits, and after that, we're free to go our separate ways. But even as he said it, Levi couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter wasn't as simple as it seemed. Zara wasn't just some broken alien princess to be discarded. She had a fire in her, a determination that made her more than just a victim. He was going to need to figure out a lot more than just how to get his credits. There was something about Zara, something that told Levi she might not be as weak as her father believed. As they made their way through the bustling spaceport, the weight of the situation settled in. Zara, still defiant, gripped the controls of her hover chair with surprising strength, and Levi, despite his growing sense of unease, couldn't help but wonder what lay ahead. The journey to the ship was tense and silent. The bustling spaceport around them hummed with life, but neither Levi nor Zara spoke. Levi pushed Zara's hover chair through the busy terminal, the movement drawing curious glances from those around them. The sight of a human mercenary and a royal alien princess together wasn't something most people saw every day, and the contrast between the two could not have been more apparent. Zara's gaze was fixed forward, her chin held high in defiance, yet there was a coldness in her eyes that Levi could not quite understand. She was angry, understandably so, but there was also a quiet strength in her, a resolve that suggested she would not be broken so easily. Levi wasn't sure how to approach her. He wasn't exactly thrilled about the situation either. But he had made his decision. He had accepted the deal, and now he had to live with the consequences. All he wanted was his credits, and then he would be free to go. But there was something about Zara, something that intrigued him. She wasn't just the broken daughter of a cruel king. She was more than that. Zara broke the silence first, her voice sharp as she turned her head to look at him. You know, you're nothing like I expected. Levi raised an eyebrow. Oh, and how's that? She didn't answer immediately, her lips curling into a faint, bitter smile. I expected you to be just like the others. Cold, unfeeling. But you're different. Levi chuckled softly, though there was no humor in his voice. If you think that makes us friends, Princess, you're mistaken. Zara's eyes narrowed, but she didn't argue. Instead, she looked away, her attention drifting toward the horizon. I don't need friends, and I certainly don't need pity. Levi couldn't help but admire her spirit, even if he wasn't sure what to do with it. He pushed the hover chair forward, feeling the weight of the awkward silence between them once again. As they approached the midnight gale, Levi's ship, Zara's gaze softened just a fraction, and she allowed herself a moment of wonder. The ship was far from impressive by royal standards, but it was Levi's pride and joy. The Midnight Gale was an old, battle-worn vessel, its hull scarred by countless battles. Yet to Levi, it was home. Zara's eyes lingered on the ship's exterior, her lips parting in curiosity. "This is your ship?" Levi nodded. "Yeah, not much to look at, but she gets the job done." Zara studied the ship for a long moment before responding, her tone a little softer than before. "You won this ship?" Levi gave a dry chuckle. "Yep, won it in a game of cards. Previous owner couldn't afford the maintenance, so here she is." As the ramp of the ship descended with a hydraulic hiss, Levi stepped aside to let Zara enter first. She maneuvered her hoverchair up the ramp with surprising ease, though she was careful not to show too much vulnerability. Levi followed behind her, trying to ignore the lingering tension between them. Inside, the ship was surprisingly well maintained. Despite its battle scars, the Midnight Gale was clean and efficient. The main corridor led to a small common area, and branching passages took them to the bridge, engine room, and living quarters. It wasn't luxurious, but it was functional. Levi had always preferred it that way. "Cozy," Zara remarked, her voice dry as she looked around the cramped space. Levi couldn't help but smirk. That's one way to put it. He gestured toward a small cabin, its furnishings sparse but clean. "This will be your room, Princess. It's not exactly palace accommodations, but I'm sure you're used to roughing it by now." Zara shot him a look that could have melted stone, but she didn't respond. She guided her hoverchair into the room, her eyes scanning the space with a mixture of curiosity and resignation. The bed was narrow, the storage unit small, and the personal hygiene station compact. It wasn't much, but it was enough for what they needed. "It'll do," Zara said, her tone flat. "I've had worse." Levi nodded, giving her space to settle in. He didn't want to crowd her, but something about the way she carried herself, despite everything, fascinated him. Zara had been humiliated by her father, cast aside as though she were worthless. And yet, she still had the fire in her eyes, the pride that refused to be extinguished. "I'll be in the engine room making repairs," Levi said, breaking the silence. "If you need anything, the ship's AI will respond to your voice commands." Zara looked at him, her expression softening just a little. "I'm not helpless, you know." Levi met her gaze. "I never said you were." With that, he turned and left the room, heading toward the engine room. The ship was old, and there was plenty of work to be done. As much as he didn't want to admit it, Levi had grown a little attached to the Midnight Gale over the years. It was more than just a ship to him. It was his home. But as he began working on the repairs, his mind kept drifting back to Zara. The way she had looked at him when he offered her help. The strength that she carried with her, even when she didn't want to acknowledge it. There was something about her that called to him, something that he couldn't ignore. Hours passed as Levi worked, his mind torn between the task at hand and the thoughts that kept creeping into his head. Zara was different. She wasn't like the other people he had met throughout his mercenary career, and despite the strange circumstances, he found himself curious about her. "Captain," the ship's AI suddenly interrupted his thoughts. "Your guest appears to be in distress." Levi's hand froze over the power coupling he was repairing. "What kind of distress?" "She is experiencing difficulty transferring from her hoverchair to the bed. Her vitals show signs of increasing physical strain." Levi sighed. He had expected Zara to reject any form of help, but now it seemed that she needed it whether she liked it or not. He wiped his hands on a rag, muttering under his breath as he made his way to her quarters. When he arrived, he found Zara half suspended between her hoverchair and the bed, her face flushed with exertion. She froze when she saw him in the doorway, her eyes flashing with a mix of anger and embarrassment. "I told you I don't need help," Zara snapped. Levi stepped forward, not backing down. "You don't have to do everything yourself." Zara's gaze softened just for a moment. "I don't need anyone's pity." Levi knelt beside her, carefully lifting her into his arms. The warmth of her skin against his was unexpected, and, for a moment, he forgot about the strange circumstances that had brought them together. He laid her gently on the bed, stepping back immediately. "There," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "That wasn't so bad, was it?" Zara looked at him, her eyes wary but somehow grateful. "You're not like him," she murmured, her voice quieter than before. Levi met her gaze, his voice firm. I'm not like anyone. With that, he left the room, his mind swirling with thoughts of Zara. She was more than just a broken princess. She was a woman who had been forced into a corner, but had not yet given up. And something told Levi that their journey together was far from over. The ship's engines hummed softly as the midnight gale drifted through space, its battered hull a testament to the trials it had faced. Inside, Levi worked tirelessly on the ship's repairs, his focus split between keeping the old craft functional and trying to make sense of the situation he found himself in. He had accepted the deal with Zara, but each passing moment brought more questions than answers. Zara, however, seemed to have no intention of slowing down. Despite her circumstances, she wasn't the type to sit idly by. Over the past few days, Levi had watched as she transformed from a seemingly fragile, broken woman into a force of nature in her own right. Her sharp mind, resourcefulness, and undeniable strength had become more apparent with every passing hour. One evening, as Levi finished a long stretch of repairs in the engine room, he was interrupted by the soft buzz of the ship's AI. The voice was calm, but urgent. "Captain, your guest is showing signs of distress again." Levi sighed, wiping the sweat from his brow. "What now?" "She is attempting to complete physical therapy exercises on her own, but is encountering significant difficulty with the new adjustments. She may need assistance." Levi cursed under his breath. He had noticed Zara's stubbornness, her need to prove herself despite the limitations she faced. But even he couldn't deny that her determination was something to be respected. He made his way to her quarters, mentally preparing himself for whatever confrontation awaited him. When he arrived, Zara was sitting on the edge of the bed, her face flushed with frustration. Her hands gripped the sides of her hover chair, and her eyes were narrowed in concentration as she tried and failed to maneuver herself out of the chair without assistance. "Zara," Levi said softly, stepping into the room. "You need help." Her head snapped up, eyes blazing with defiance. "I don't need your pity, Levi." "I'm not offering pity," Levi replied, his voice steady. "I'm offering assistance. You can't do everything on your own, no matter how stubborn you are." Zara's lips curled into a bitter smile, but she didn't argue. "I've been doing it my whole life. What's one more day?" Levi walked toward her, crouching down, to her level. "Sometimes, Zara, you need someone to help carry the weight, whether you like it or not." For a moment, there was silence between them, the only sound the faint hum of the ship's systems. Zara seemed to be weighing his words, but the stubbornness that had defined her for so long remained. Finally, she spoke, her voice quieter but tinged with resignation. "I don't want to be weak." Levi's eyes softened. "You're not weak. You're human. And humans have their strengths even if they're not always obvious." Zara looked at him, her eyes still filled with a mixture of pride and uncertainty. For the first time since they had met, she didn't argue. Instead, she nodded, allowing Levi to gently lift her from the chair and guide her to the bed. "I'm not your burden," she said quietly as he helped her settle. Levi met her gaze. "No, you're not, but you're not an island either. No one is." Zara didn't respond, but Levi could tell that something had shifted. Perhaps it was the simple act of allowing someone else to help her, or perhaps it was the realization that she wasn't as alone as she had once thought. Either way, the weight of their unspoken understanding hung in the air between them, solidifying the uneasy alliance they had formed. The following days passed in a similar fashion, with Zara pushing herself to her limits while Levi continued to repair the ship. He couldn't help but admire her tenacity as she worked to regain some semblance of control over her body and her life. She practiced movements, using her hover chair's advanced servos to simulate combat maneuvers. The more she practiced, the more confident she became, but there was always that underlying vulnerability, a fear that perhaps she would never be whole again. Levi, meanwhile, was beginning to notice a shift within himself. At first he had seen Zara as little more than a means to an end, a way to settle his debt with King Valthor. But the more he watched her struggle and persevere, the more he found himself respecting her. Zara wasn't just the daughter of a cruel king. She was a woman fighting to prove that she was more than her father's words. She was fighting to define herself on her own terms. One night, after a long day of training and repairs, Levi found himself in the common area, his mind spinning with the day's events. He didn't want to admit it, but his thoughts kept drifting to Zara. There was something about her, something beyond her beauty or her strength. It was the fire in her soul, the way she refused to let her circumstances define her. It intrigued him, and despite his best efforts, he couldn't stop thinking about her. As if on cue, Zara entered the common area, her hover chair gliding smoothly over the floor. She had been practicing again, and the sweat on her brow told Levi that she had pushed herself to the limit. "Done for the night?" Levi asked, his voice low. Zara nodded, but there was a hint of frustration in her eyes. "I'm not improving fast enough. It's like I'm stuck in this chair forever." Levi's heart tightened at the words, but he didn't show it. Instead, he leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. "You're improving faster than you think. Don't sell yourself short." Zara shot him a skeptical look. "You sound like one of those motivational speakers, but it's not enough." Levi pushed off from the wall and walked toward her. "What do you want, Zara? For things to change overnight?" Her eyes met his, and for a moment they were both silent. "No," she finally admitted. "I want to be able to walk again. I want to prove to everyone that I'm not just my legs, that I'm not broken." Levi stood in front of her, his eyes locked with hers. "You've already proven that, Zara. You're not broken. You're stronger than you realize." Zara looked away, her gaze softening. "I don't know if I can believe that yet." Levi knelt beside her, placing a hand on the armrest of her chair. "Believe it. You've already come so far. And if I have anything to say about it, you'll keep going, no matter what." Zara didn't respond immediately, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes. It wasn't hope, not yet, but it was something close. "Thanks," she said quietly, her voice soft but sincere. "For everything." Levi nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Anytime, princess." And with that, the unspoken bond between them grew even stronger, a silent promise that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. As Levi turned to leave, he couldn't help but wonder what the future held for both of them. He had never anticipated that a simple mercenary job would lead him to this, standing by the side of a woman who, despite everything, refused to be anything but strong. As the days passed, the ship's systems slowly came back online, and Levi's focus shifted to the task at hand. But in the back of his mind, Zara's presence lingered. There was more to her story, more to her transformation, and Levi couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was far from over. The days aboard the Midnight Gale seemed to blend together, as Levi and Zara continued their journey across the vast expanse of space. The ship's repairs were nearly complete, but something about the quiet hum of the engines didn't sit right with Levi. The calm before the storm, he thought. But it wasn't just the ship. It was the growing tension between him and Zara that he couldn't ignore. Zara was different now, stronger, more focused. The intensity in her violet eyes had shifted from rage to determination. Levi had always respected a person's resolve, but he had never encountered anyone quite like Zara. She had been given the title of a broken princess, but in truth, she was anything but broken. She was a woman who had learned to fight her own battles, who had never once allowed her disability to define her. Every day she proved herself in ways Levi hadn't anticipated. One morning, as Levi worked on the final touches of the ship's repair systems, Zara entered the engine room, her hover chair humming quietly behind her. Her gaze was fixed on the small control panel in front of Levi, but her mind seemed to be elsewhere, lost in thought. Levi noticed her, glancing up from his work. "You're up early today." Zara didn't respond immediately. She maneuvered her chair, closer to the workbench, eyes scanning the intricate systems Levi had been tweaking. "I've been thinking," she said at last, her voice uncharacteristically soft. Levi raised an eyebrow. "About?" Her violet eyes met his with a mixture of intensity and uncertainty. About what happens when we reach our destination. Levi wiped his hands on a rag, stepping closer. You mean when we get back to your home planet? Zara nodded. Yeah. When we get there, I'll face my father, the one who discarded me like a broken toy. I've been thinking a lot about how I'll confront him, what I'll say, but most importantly, what I'll do. Levi's heart tightened at the thought of Zara facing her father, the king who had cast her aside without a second thought. He knew the encounter wouldn't be easy for her. King Valthor Kreen was ruthless, a leader who cared little for anything other than his own power. Zara had no illusions about that, but Levi could see that her resolve had grown. You're not that little girl anymore, Levi said, his voice low but full of conviction. You've changed, I've seen it. You've become stronger than he ever realized. You've become a warrior in your own right. Zara didn't respond right. Away, her lips pressing together in thought. After a long pause, she finally spoke, her voice tinged with a touch of bitterness. I wish I had known that sooner. Maybe it would have saved me from all the years of humiliation, from the constant reminder that I was a burden. Levi's gaze softened. You were never a burden, Zara, not to me, and not to anyone who really sees you. Zara turned her head slightly, her eyes narrowing as if she was searching for something in his expression. What are you saying, Levi? He took a deep breath, his voice quiet but firm. I'm saying that you're not defined by your past and you're not defined by your father. You're defined by what you choose to do next, and I think you already know what you're capable of. Zara looked away, but her grip on the controls of her hover chair tightened. She had come a long way since Levi had first met her. No longer the broken daughter of a king. She had evolved into someone who understood the weight of her own power. She had shed the shackles of her past, and now she was ready to embrace her future. I need to face him, Zara said quietly, her voice full of determination. But this time I won't be the one to kneel. This time I'll show him who I've become. Levi nodded, understanding the weight of her words. And I'll be right beside you. There was a brief silence between them, the air thick with unspoken emotions. Then Zara's voice broke through the stillness. What if he doesn't accept me? What if I'm still just the daughter he discarded? What if everything I've worked for means nothing to him? Levi's eyes were unwavering as he met her gaze. Then we'll make him see, but you're not doing this alone, not anymore. You've got me, and you've got yourself. That's all that matters. Zara's expression softened, the edges of her fierce demeanor fading just a little. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't destined to be a victim of her past. She could feel a shift within herself, a new kind of strength that came not from the physical training she had endured, but from the emotional fortitude she had built. Levi wasn't just the mercenary who had taken her in. He was becoming something more, someone who believed in her, someone who could see her strength when no one else could. And as much as Zara hated to admit it, that connection was exactly what she needed to move forward. Later that day, as the Yoai midnight gale exited hyperspace, the stars stretched out before them in a vast sea of light. The familiar sight of Zara's home planet Xylaris came into view. It was a breathtaking sight, towering crystal cities that seemed to touch the sky, the planet's surface gleaming with the energy of its advanced civilization. But for Zara, there was no beauty in the sight. There was only a deep sense of unease, the fear of what awaited her. Levi stood beside her as she gazed out the viewport. Ready? He asked, his voice steady, though he knew the weight of the moment was not lost on her. Zara took a deep breath, the air thick with anticipation. I don't think I'll ever be ready for this, but I have to do it. For me. Levi placed a hand on her shoulder, a gesture of solidarity. We both do, and we'll face it together. As they descended toward the planet's surface, Zara's mind raced with possibilities. She had no idea what the future held, or how her father would react when he saw her. But one thing was certain, she would never be the broken princess again. She was a warrior, and this time, she would fight for herself. The midnight gale shuddered as it entered the atmosphere of Xylaris, the ship's AI announcing their arrival at the royal palace. The tension was thick as they made their descent toward the landing pad. Zara's hands gripped the armrests of her hoverchair, her heart pounding in her chest. They had arrived, and Zara was no longer the woman she had once been. She was ready to face her father, to face the king who had cast her aside. But this time, she wouldn't be the one to kneel. The ramp descended, and with Levi by her side, Zara made her way to the landing pad, her cybernetic enhanced legs carrying her with confidence and grace. Her father, King Valthor Kreen, would soon learn that the daughter he had discarded was no longer his to control. This was just the beginning.